support is often key to entrepreneurial success and survival. We've all seen children helping at the family restaurant and spouses working as bookkeepers and office managers. But increasingly, we're seeing parents assisting with their children's entrepreneurial ventures. And today, we're talking with Alan Esrock, founder and CEO of NxtGen Nexus, for advice on making parent employment work. Thanks for being with me, Alan.
Well, thanks for having me, Kim. This is such a fun, exciting topic to be talking about. I kind of can't wait to jump in.
So, why are we seeing more entrepreneurs hiring their parents?
Since COVID, there's been this huge influx in entrepreneurship. And so, obviously, if entrepreneurship is going to go up, then more parents are going to have part-time or free jobs, whether they want it or not.
And what has been your experience?
So a couple months ago, we went to visit a friend of ours up in Seattle. Hadn't seen them for a while. And we had heard that their daughter, who was a prima ballerina and then went into corporate, decided it's COVID, I'm done. I'm going to start a little dance studio. We drove up there and, the parents were so proud of her, shows us a shopping center. And they go, see that corner of the shopping center? It's like, yes, that's all of her dance studio. And it's like, that's huge. And it was, yeah, she now has like 20 people working for her. So it was really exciting to see. It was really exciting when we saw her later, how just enthusiastic she was about entrepreneurship. And of course, her parents were there to support her in the early stage with just picking up stuff, little bookkeeping, nothing huge. But the biggest source of support was that they were both entrepreneurs. When you're born into it and you've seen it and you're raised in it, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I can do this because this is what my parents have done. My own family, my brother was a dentist. He invented a disposable air water syringe, sold it to a big company. But their first show, he was in New York. He's a dentist, and dentists aren't necessarily good salespeople. So I employed my parents, who had a family business, and especially my mom, who just went out onto the floor, would grab people and go, you need to see my son's product. And, that's really what it's about. It's about free labor, but it's also that intensity of this can be done and you do it and you just do it together.
Oh, that's so nice. And it does sound like, especially for a startup, it must be hard getting people to hire people, particularly until you have income to even pay a salary and mom and dad helping in and jumping in and being that proud and supportive.
It is so fantastic. When you talk about compensation, we talk about sweat equity. Get those people together, raise some money, have a successful exit, and that's great. Well, parents are kind of non-equity partners, sweat equity. On one hand, it's the worst of the worst for them. But on the other hand, to see your child succeed and that you influence that success, it's pure joy. And let's face it, we all need a little more pure joy in our lives these days.
Oh, so you mentioned definitely some of the advantages for the parents. Anything else for the children? Maybe even some of the disadvantages of employing mom or dad?
Part of the issue is if a child is in a family business, they can grow in the family business, they can take over the business. There are opportunities for growth. I mean, there's a long path to this, and many times it goes over generations. It's completely different for parents. The goals are different. So the issues can be different, but some of them are the same. One of the issue is how is this going to impact the relationships with the other family members? I mean, let's say you have a brother and a sister, and mom and dad had been like doing a lot of babysitting or childcare for them. is this going to impact that relationship? Dinner conversations become the conversations between the parent and the entrepreneur, and everyone else is just kind of sitting on the side wanting to talk about going to kids soccer games. The parents in the business could be considered spies by the employees, because typically when someone grows up in a family business, if they're a teenager or above, they complain about their parents. And there's always, kind of those old timer employees to talk to who said, I remember when your dad was just a boy, and it was because of me that we were successful. I don't get any credit. But in this case, the parents are there looking over everyone's shoulder. They have no bridge to burn moving forward. So I think that's a real issue. I think one of the biggest issues is if you're having a parent in the business could outgrow them. At some point, the parent could have diminished faculties to be useful in the business. And that is so difficult because it's your parent. I think that's maybe, of everything we're talking about, the most critical issue as to how to deal with that.
So you kind of hinted the parent-child relationship, it's quite complex. So before even asking a parent to help with the business, what should an entrepreneur think about?
The ability to communicate with your parents. So I think everything needs to be tremendously open and on the table and even documented. I mean, you may have a startup that you don't have a documentation with your lawyer, yet you really need to have documentation with your parents, who they are, what you're trying to achieve, where they're going to add the greatest value. If you're having this open conversation from day one, all of a sudden you guys can track together what's going on and you have reference points to go back to. Then there are some of the other issues, like can you separate work life, family life? What you don't want to do is, if you have some sort of issue with your parents, like this long-standing under the water thing that no one's talked about in 20 or 30 years, don't have them work with you in the business, because all of a sudden it's just going to rekindle. We always talk about, are you a family? Are you a business? Which comes first? But I really think in this case, you really have to be protective of your parents. You really want to make sure that everyone's on the same page, talking about the same stuff, because business is hard and working with family is hard squared or whatever. It's just challenging.
When we talk about, parents hiring their children and even having the children work close by, I always talk about how, the parent-child relationship, it transfers and amplifies. And you kind of hinted at that same thing. If you and your parent kind of don't get along that well, maybe you shouldn't employ them. Because the relationship, if it's difficult, if they're, what do they say, oil and water, it's just going to amplify. So that is definitely something to think about, or maybe having it only temporary.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's like, this is not going to solve your relationship problem with your parents. Don't do it.
And when things maybe are not working out, say a parent feels underappreciated, or like you mentioned, might not have the skills for the job, what do you advise?
It's like, look, everything is great. It's like this entire business. I can't believe, we got into Costco. I can't believe we have international distribution. I can't believe that I'm on a podcast talking about my family business. I mean, I can't believe any of these things are happening. And then you have this one terrible thing going on, which is, how do I deal with my parents? So the more we can wrap them in the success, let them know what a big part of the success that they are, then I think it might make that really difficult situation a little better.
So it sounds like even when the sweat equity, right, at startup, should they already be having a conversation about what the next year or two is going to look like? Is it just temporary? You're filling in till I, get my feet off the ground? How does this, how do, or, and when does it turn to kind of employment?
The sooner you have the conversation, I mean, before, before you're doing anything, you really need to know that relationship, what you guys want to do. It's just got to be documented at an early stage.
When should you be paying them? Or should you?
Part of it is, does your family need the income? I
Mhm.
mean, if they do, then of course you need to be paying them. If a parent starts a business with the entrepreneur, how does that affect the other children? How does paying them affect the other children? All family businesses are different, but they're all the same. This is one. All family business are different, and you just have to figure out how the business is doing, what the success is doing, what's the need. It's tricky, and if someone has any great answers, I'd sure like to know them.
I know, I would too, actually, because I'm sure you have. I've heard both sides. I've heard parents saying they want to do it, they take pride in it, but I've also heard parents where they start to feel taken advantage of.
Exactly. And maybe that, we talk about that communication document from day one. Maybe it is included in there, and the parent might say, we don't have to do this. I'm not expecting to get paid, but maybe they are, as it goes down and they're successful, it would make them feel better. So I think maybe that would be one of the many items that should be discussed when a parent, steps in and helps support their entrepreneurial child or children.
Oh, this was great, Alan. And I help my daughter, so and she's a teenager, so it's super tough.
Oh boy, yeah, kind of the mom helper role. Yeah, that's too many hats for me.
It is too many hats, but this was excellent. You gave some fantastic advice. Kim Eddleston with familybusiness.org and Entrepreneur Innovation Exchange with Alan Esrock, CEO and founder of NxtGen Nexus. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. This was really a lot of fun.